All right, we're live. Welcome to happy hour number 3, or happy hour if you prefer a silent H. I haven't decided. Yeah, we've got some folks from Junto here. So the happy hour is just a chance for people building Holochain projects to ask questions. I should introduce myself. I'm Michael Doherty. I work on the Holochain team, working on core, as well as working on holo hosting. So I'll be here to just kind of field any questions about Holochain app design and anything else that comes up. Hey, you two, want to introduce yourselves?
Sure. I'm Eric. I'm the director at Junto, and I'm joined with Josh, our CTO.
Mm-hmm. Welcome. So you've been building an app. You've been building your entire offering on Holochain. Is that right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So yeah, and you're releasing the code for it very soon. So, did you have any questions right off the bat of like how you're going about things? Like, well, I guess before that, I'm curious, what led you to choose Holochain?
So essentially, we made this shift towards decentralization a little over a year ago. And then we were looking at blockchain solutions to start. And after digging through their architecture, realized that fundamentally it wasn't very scalable, and that they were building off of a set of principles that required a lot of, restructuring and sharding and things like that. And so we came across Arthur Brock's website, and just in terms of the philosophy, we found that it was far more aligned with how we're thinking about things. It being more agent-centric, energy efficient, scalable, and realized that they had actually been working on this for quite some time. But the greater meta currency project for actually I think it's over a decade now, right? And just have had poured a lot of thought and intention into it, and had, the white paper already released with Holochain as well, and a lot of code written. So we just got in touch with him and decided it was a good way to go.
Mm-hmm. So have you been building on which version of Holochain, the prototype version?
Yeah, I mean, we started with the prototype version, just to like play around and get used to how it was working.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we've been following the development of the new Rust version, and yeah, I've been learning Rust the past month, and then we've slowly been, kind of shifting our architecture to be, I think, a little bit more interesting and trying to take more advantage of the way the Holochain works. And yeah.
Cool. So yeah, so I definitely hear you. Yeah, I know a bit about what you're doing. You're building a social network that is more agent centric. People have control of their own data. Can sort of write their own algorithms for displaying feeds and stuff like that. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah, and that totally lines up with what Holochain is trying to facilitate. Are there, I guess, so are there like technically, have you found that Holochain's been a good technical fit also, like just in terms of performance and the way that, like the way that your data is shaped and the way that it fits into the Holochain framework? Is that?
Yeah, definitely. It actually clicked pretty quickly. At least how I think you would start to design applications. Yeah, it was a very nice fit, actually. I mean, the only missing puzzle I think we have at the moment is the storage of the data itself. Meaning, like, the video and photos and that kind of larger pieces of data. That's like the only thing I think we're unsure of, and whether to go down like the route of IPFS, or perhaps to bridge an app in the future which creates some kind of file storage network which is sharded across DHTs or whatever. So that's the only missing piece. But yeah, other than that, it's been it's been really good to integrate with, and especially the new developer portal. The documentation is really nice, quick start guides and that kind of thing. It's been good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's thanks to Connor. He's so on top of the documentation.
Yeah,
Thank you,
when
Connor.
I saw that, I was really happy.
Awesome. The file storage thing is kind of still an open question in the community. I mean, there are ways to do it on Holochain, and people have built DNAs that revolve around that. But yeah, I think it's going to be kind of in the experimental phase for some time until we see an app actually use it. Yeah. So about the other parts of your architecture, I don't know, I'm curious, can you give me a rundown of
Yeah,
how it's all put together? Yeah.
I think before we give you the rundown, it's probably going to be best if Eric just gives you like a real brief overline of like some of like the some of the words in the product, you know, just so like when I explain the architecture, you can kind of like piece together what's trying to be created in the end. Yeah.
And Josh, in the meantime, can you share the architecture that you designed on your screen?
Sure. Yeah.
And yeah, so I'm happy to walk through briefly how Junto actually works. So within Junto, we wanted to really model it after how real life actually works. And there are these three different layers that we see. The first one being this more public layer, this collective layer. And then the next one being a more private layer, which we call a pack. And so, you know, Junto is kind of shaped around the theme of the wolf, etc. And the den itself, like there's that most private layer as well. And so essentially within Junto, you have an ever expanding number of mediums to which you can create. And we provide a set default, about 6 or 7 to start, where it's, you know, long form, which can incorporate video, image, links, etc. And then there's short form, which has like an overlay, shorter text with character limits, and then there's like photos, music, events. And over time, you know, the evolution of these mediums will be community driven in terms of what the community actually wants, right? And so then people will be able to customize like expressions that they have on their docket. And it's really driven by the philosophy of, you know, we really want to enable that exploration of the infinite potential of human expression and self-expression. And so when you create something in Junto, you can decide where you want to share it to. So you can share it publicly to everybody. You can share it just to your pack, which is that closer circle of people you feel more comfortable with, and you can just choose to share it privately. And you can also tag it into channels. So we call them channels. And so channel is essentially a topic, and it can be basically anything. It can be location, it can be, you know, technology, it can be, you know, spirituality, it can be design, it can be food, it can be whatever you want it to be. And if a channel doesn't exist, and when someone creates their own channel, it just creates a new one as well. And so those are kind of the key themes. And within the pack, just to kind of close off with this, a pack is essentially our way of redefining what a community really is. And so we've seen a lot of communities grow around things like location, ideas, you know, mutual interests. But for us, the deepest kind of community is one that is agent-centric, one that is centered around the individual. And so who we are as people is more than what we choose to share, right? We're actually a representation of the people that have influenced us a lot in our lives. And so with that in mind, a pack is everything that we choose to share publicly, and everything that people in our pack choose to share publicly as well. And in addition to things that we choose to share privately to that pack. And so it's kind of like a way for each individual to be a thread of facilitating that mutual connections. And if you like kind of analyze how things really happen naturally in real life when people meet each other in more organic ways, it is through people. And it's also a way to facilitate that a more exciting way of content discovery too. And so with that in mind, I'll just, you know, let Josh take lead and just walk through the architecture that he has created based off of that. And yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, you guys can see my screen okay, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So, I mean, like you touched on briefly earlier, kind of the goal is to be able to find expressions using any kind of attributes which that expression might have, right?
And
So
an expression is like a post.
exactly, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So if a post has, you know, the channels or the topics, Holochain and technology associated to it, and it also has, it was also posted in 2019, so it has the time 2019 associated to it. I wanted to try and create a queryable structure whereby you could find information based on these you could find posts based on these attributes. So here, like, we have channel holochain, and this is within a global context. So within the channel entry, it would have a parent, which would be the app hash, essentially, to make it a unique channel, like unique to a global context.
Mm-hmm.
And then linking from that channel, we would just have firstly the channel a tag called holochain, and then we would have a tag 2019 holochain and tech holochain. The reason for this is so that when we want to query for expressions which are posted in 2019 and also have the channel name holochain, we can use like a query string like that and get links using the query string.
Mm-hmm.
So this kind of shows the flow of everything, and each of these contexts would, I guess, be their own DHT. So we have a user context, which would be its own DHT, and then within the user DHT, they would have their dens, which is kind of like, I guess you could say, the profile, where people can see posts. And then linking from the dens, we would have channels, which would be created upon a user creating a post. So in this example, this post down here had the associations channel holochain, channel tech, and it was posted in 2019. So basically in the application, we go through and we have a look at private den and we say, okay, does the channel holochain with private den exist? If not, then we create the den with the parent of the private den. And then we do this for each pack. And then we essentially create these linking structures off of each channel in order to provide this kind of querying ability, whereby, you know, everything is kind of linked together. So no matter where you start from, you can bring different pieces together to find expression posts.
Mm-hmm. Right, because in the DHT, you can't get anywhere unless you have a starting place and a reference somewhere else, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully that makes sense. It's kind of a little bit trippy to try and explain it sometimes, because there's just so many links going on.
So question,
yeah.
Are the ovals different DHTs or the boxes?
Yes, yeah.
The ovals.
That's what we're thinking. And that was one of my questions as well, actually, was where do we kind of like draw the line? Where do we say like, okay, this should be its own DHT for, looking towards scaling, or this can just be an entry and then we can just link off the entry.
Okay. Yeah. Right. So so there's the question of scaling, right? Like optimization.
Yeah.
And then also the question of data integrity, right? Like that's kind of the primary function of a DHT membrane, right? Like literally, where do you draw the line? That's it. Where do you create the membrane? Where do you decide what's inside and outside of this space? Yeah, there might be different considerations for performance reasons, and you might have even thought more about that than me, because you're building an app that a lot of people are going to use, hopefully. But just talking about the data integrity considerations, like, if performance were not an issue, where would you want to draw those lines?
Yeah.
And then I mean, if Holochain is doing its job right, which we're trying to do, then hopefully those will roughly coincide with what's best for performance too. So you've got, every user has their own DHT. So that's just like the private space. And then I'm assuming some of these lines are, you're bridging into that space to get it out?
Yeah, I
or?
mean, this is one of the questions which I'm kind of unsure of, because I was actually architecting the entire application originally with a user being an entry, right, rather than being its own DHT. And then I was listening to the hAppy Hour, and you were kind of saying about the scalability problems of doing that. And then I kind of decided that when we can spawn up new DHTs, we're gonna break things apart. So like a group or a pack would be its own DHT, a user would be its own DHT. And then, yeah, I guess, yeah, you would have to call into the DHT, from my understanding, to then get links on, for example, a private den. I don't really know how that looks or how to piece that together in my head, but yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, bridging is another agent-centric activity, right? That's something one agent does with all of the spaces, DNAs, DHTs that they're a part of, right? So each DHT represents a single coherent space, right? Like it's got its own validation rules. It like defines a particular language or like a game that everybody who's participating in is playing, right? Sure. Like everybody who has that DNA installed is, has agreed to sort of play the same game, speak the same language. And then bridging plays the role, I like this analogy. Bridging plays the role of like translating between different languages. So, right, like if your pack is, it might be running the same code as every other pack, but it is its own distinct group, right? Meaning it has its own network. Other people can't even know about it unless they know your particular hash. Yeah, and then you are, so you've got all of these installed on your machine, and then through bridging, you can pass information in between them, right? So it's, I mean, I'm still like wanting to ask more about how how it's all put together, but just my observation now is, when you're thinking about where to draw those lines, you think about, you can think about it in terms of privacy, right? Like, if you're in the group context, you don't have to worry about who else can see it. You know that only the people in that group have access to that data. And then bridging is a way to bring that into another space, sort of to like, yeah, share that information into another space.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Then yeah, I think for sure group and user would be their own DHTs, especially given the privacy concerns or questions. And then if I had a user, so Eric's a user on Junto, how would I go about finding his DHT? Would it be like, yeah, that I'm kind of confused about that.
Sure.
Because like currently you could just query, right? You could just say like you could just create the entry and then get the hash for the entry and then query and find it. But as far as finding like his own DHT, how would that look?
Right. So when you said each user has their own DHT,
yeah,
what I took that to mean is that they're the only ones on that network. Like that I mean, it doesn't even really make sense to say that they have a DHT because there's nobody else on the network is on it, so they're not even networking with anybody. Okay, and so this is a pattern we're using in we were calling it the Holo Vault, but now it's like our personas and profiles app, where you have like it was called a vault because there was a DNA that you would be the only person who has that, and it would just be a place to store your profile data.
Yeah.
But then the other DNAs you had installed could bridge into that to pull out your personal profile data on an as-needed basis.
I see, right, yeah.
So this looks like it could be a similar pattern. Now, when you're asking, like, how can somebody else find your own user DHT? Well, they would have to know about its existence. The DHT is defined by the DNA, which ultimately boils down to the hash of the DNA, right? So, and well, really it boils down to the actual code that makes the DNA run.
Mm-hmm.
So unless they have that code, they won't even know about the existence of this thing. They won't be able to network with it.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah. So it's just kind of giving you ideas of some patterns that we're already playing with and using. So like when I say that it might be possible that nobody knows about this DHT, that might be what you want. So take like chat as an example. We're doing this thing where, there's a public space, and anybody, call it the chat app. Anybody who downloads that DNA can join because they're part of the same network, same DHT. But if they want to create a private room, they can create a new DHT. They can take their DNA code and modify it just a little bit. Like they can add a little unique identifier into the code, because any change in the code will result in a new hash.
Sure.
It creates a new network.
Yeah.
It has the same functionality, but it's a new network.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, in the context of having a user DHT, if there was public posts as well as private posts in the DHT, you wouldn't necessarily want everyone to know about that entire user DHT. Perhaps you would have a private DHT within the user, which contains within the user context even, which would contain the private posts of that user, which only they know about, and then only the shared or the public posts would be in the kind of public DHT space.
Yeah, you could do that. There's also it's not really implemented yet, but there's the notion of private entries. Mm-hmm. Also, have you seen those?
I haven't. No, I don't think so.
It's I mean, yeah, you could do it with a separate DHT for the private stuff and then bridge it over, but there is going to be this ability to create a private entry. So it's an entry that you commit to your source chain, but you don't publish the content. Sure. You only publish the header, so people know that you committed a private entry, but they don't know what it is.
Okay.
But then you can give people capability to fetch it from you on an as-needed basis.
That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it requires you both to be online at the same time, because you like wind up directly sending that message to the person that's requesting it, that you want to give the capability to access it. Mm-hmm. But if that works with the model of what you're trying to do, that can be another way to do it.
Okay.
Yeah, it depends on the use case, because on the other hand, if you want it to be accessible when you're offline, which very well may be the case, then you might want to put them into a truly private space, and then invite people into that space by sharing, maybe by sharing DNA hash, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, that clears that up a lot.
Cool.
Yeah, I have one other question as well. I mean, how is like the price of hosting kind of determined? Is it based on storage, or is it based on like CPU cycles or something like that? Because based on our architecture, there's going to be a lot of links created, like a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering like how much that would kind of scale the expense of our application, if you know.
Right. Yeah. Let's think about that. So you're talking about the holo hosting case, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah. So, you know, if normal Holochain users are using it, then of course that's not even an issue. But yeah, for it to be holo hosted, for it to be widely available and all that. So pricing is set by the hosts. And the various metrics are, yeah, the things you mentioned, like CPU time, storage, network bandwidth, you know, those are the major ones. And hosts are, you know, hosts basically set their own rates. So it's this sort of self-adjusting market, right? Like if someone's charging too much for some particular commodity or service, then they won't get as much traffic, right? Because people are going to try to pick the cheapest host. And the hosts are ranked into sort of tiers or tranches of service. Like if you have a really high record of like really low latency in serving up stuff, then you'll be put into like a higher tranche for that particular dimension of service. Like
Okay.
you're a low latency server, or if you're really good at storing tons of data, then you might be like a high storage host.
That's really cool.
So stuff like that. Yeah.
So I know as more hosts join the network, it's going to drive the price. It'll likely drive the price down for hosting. But in terms of I guess where things are now, where do you speculate the price of hosting to be in comparison to, you know, more centralized architectures like AWS?
I'm not an economist, so I don't have a clear idea of that. But if I were to think about it, well, I really don't know. We're gonna have to see how it shakes out.
Okay.
But in terms of what you are actually storing, you know, you said your main concern is a lot of links, right? Which I can see. It looks like it's like you're storing every possible permutation.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That can get really big really fast, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like that's exponential growth.
Yeah, I mean, we could potentially, you know, kind of trim it down and put some rules on the way you query things to help kind of just, you know, reduce the amount of links. Like, for example, saying that you can't start querying from a time and you can only start querying from a channel and that kind of thing. But yeah, I guess, I don't know, maybe that's something we'll find out as the Holo network is launched and we start to see how many links get created. And
yeah, it would also be interesting to shape out like how many people will actually be running that Holochain application and itself. So I guess we'll have a better idea of this once we actually release the beta.
Yeah, this is it's a really interesting open problem too. Like, how do you do search? This is, you know, it's a search problem. I mean, it's a basic one because you're just searching based on, you know, tags. But yeah, it's you know, in general searching is a whole problem. Indexing, all this. We're probably going to see solutions crop up around this, like more general solutions, like even search-based DNAs that like will index data from another DNA.
Yeah. And
maybe there will be holo hosts that specialize in being like indexing nodes, stuff like that. So yeah, your solution, it'll work. You know, I will be concerned, you know, yeah, if, as you get hundreds of channels, you're going to get a ton of links. So, I'm wondering, do you need to have, like, for instance, you've got Holochain and then 2019 Holochain. So that corresponds to somebody searching for both of those things, 2019 and Holochain.
Yeah, starting from the channel Holochain.
Yeah. Okay. So you've got 3 channels: Holochain, Tech, and 2019. So if I search for Holochain 2019, well, tell me how this sounds. What if you didn't have all those links? What if you only had one link from a channel to an expression, and then you just do multiple queries? If somebody looks for, like, if we just imagine one arrow from each. I'm looking like at the global, from the global context, looking at the arrows flowing from global to expression. If you just had a single link from each channel, when I search for Holochain 2019, you can split the string. You can find the entry that has the channel of that name. That'll get you the hash of that entry, because you can, if you construct the content of what you're looking for, you can find the hash, and then you can find that entry. You can go look it up. So that'll get you the channel entry, and then you can get links on the channel, and that'll get you all the expressions. And if you just do that twice, once for Holochain, once for 2019, you'll do two different get links queries, and then you can just merge the results once you get them.
Yeah, that was how our original application was architected. And like with this one, I just kind of wanted to play around and just like try different methodologies. And yeah, I mean, wouldn't there be a problem? I mean, if there's like 10,000 entries on the channel Holochain, and then you have to get the entries in Holochain, and then there's like 100,000 on 2019, and then you have to get them on 2019, and then you have to cross-reference them. I figured it might take a long time to then go through the data when you have like millions and millions of records. So I was kind of, exploring like both options, because perhaps, I don't know, that one's taking a long time computationally, but this one is storing a lot more data and a lot more links. So I was, just exploring the two.
Yeah, it's totally a trade-off between time and space. Yeah, like here you're doing the pre-indexing sort of all the combinations.
So on the front end, we can, and right now it's up in the air. I think it's between 3 to 5 right now, but we can enforce a channel limitation in terms of how many channels an expression can be linked to from the user's end when they create something. So that might also reduce that problem as well.
Maybe you could do an adaptive sort of thing, sort of like like ant, like when an ant finds food, they, after enough ants follow the same trail, then they lay down a strong link. So I mean, if this turns up to blow up in terms of space, maybe when enough queries are done commonly, like if everybody's searching for Holochain 2019, then you can add that specialized link that has both tags.
That's a good idea, yeah.
And then you're not doing it for every possible permutation. Because it's an optimization. It's all about that trade-off.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, it would be exciting to see how we can optimize that as the application starts to get fully developed. Because I mean, this architecture is nearly there. Like it's nearly working. So once it's done, I could start playing around with some tests and then see yeah, how bad it is and how I could optimize it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Cool. And also keep in mind pretty much the state of the art of decentralized applications is Ethereum, and even if it takes a long time to fetch 10,000 entries and merge them all, it's going to be a lot faster than what's in the state of the art.
That's very true.
Yeah.
Cool.
Oh, yeah, this is really interesting. So, yeah, so are you planning on looking for a solution for file storage before, or I guess when, where is that on your roadmap?
I mean, we're planning to kind of try and release as Holo comes out. So I think right now it's looking like we're probably going to go for IPFS. And just for the time being, until perhaps there's like a storage application built on Holochain, and then maybe we'll move across. Yeah, but it's something I think we need to give more consideration to, and then come to a conclusion. But maybe in a couple months or so, we'll have that piece figured out.
Cool. Yeah, so just like store the address, the IPFS address. Yeah,
exactly. But obviously, yeah, we have the problems with IPFS where, I think Eric was saying earlier that only 95% of the data on IPFS is found. Like 5% of it sometimes you query and it's not there, which could be a problem. So yeah, it's likely we have to move away from IPFS.
Yeah, and I would imagine that's because it's not incentivized yet, so people just drop off. Yeah, but I guess if you set up your own IPFS nodes that hosted everything, it would be an upfront cost, but it would at least get you reliable storage for the time being. Yeah, I mean, it's probably not going to take too long for there to be a Holochain solution for this. I mean, it's just a matter of splitting up the file and storing. So we had a hackathon in Brooklyn. Yeah, I saw Eric there, but one of the hackathoners created a I don't know if you saw this already. They created a video streaming service on Holochain where they sharded the file, blasted them all into the HT, or just committed them all as entries, created links from all of them to a common entry, and then that was like the canonical entry. I don't know how that performs, but it's doable, and it was done in a weekend.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe it's possible to architect our own solution then, along those lines.
Yeah, and again, I don't know how it will perform, but it would work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot to be built. It'd be exciting to see what kind of performance these kind of applications get, and see how the optimization of and the design of application changes as we start to understand how how Holochain performs as it gets bigger. Yeah. Yeah, if you want to, we could do a code review if you have some time. If you wanted to look through the code.
Yeah, I was just going to ask.
Let me see. I could send you a GitHub link. I'll invite you to the GitHub repo.
Sure. Do you want to share it on your screen? Or?
Yeah, that would be better.
Yeah. Just kind of give me a little tour.
Can you see?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's still very much in the early stages, and there's a lot to be done. But essentially, at the moment, we're just using one zone. I kind of experimented with using multiple zones, but I kind of found it just to be easier just to use a module for each kind of you know, expression type. And yeah, you can see what I have here. So one of the core kind of helper functions which we created is a function called handle hooks. So when we commit an entry to the DHT, we can call this with some function parameters essentially, and then create all of the links and all of the other expressions which need to be created upon an entry being put to the DHT. So, oh my, this is giving me some trouble. So, for example, when we create a user, just a simple handle create user function, we put the entry in, commit the entry, and then we call handle hooks. And yeah, we just send you know, the expression type, the address into handle hooks, and then we have a definitions file here, which basically this is, I'm kind of moving away from this architecture and starting to, yeah, I've actually refactored a lot of the code, but essentially each expression type has hooks defined, and this basically just explains the tags which can exist, the expression types which can be used in these hook functions, and then the functions to be run. So if we go to handle hooks, we kind of iterate through the hook functions, and then we match them, and then we call them. So basically, it's just a way of, on each expression type, we define all of the functions which need to run when it gets committed. And that's like kind of one way I found to like kind of streamline the process of just streamlining the code, really.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. So can you take me through one of, so like when you do commit a user, what else needs to get run?
Sure. So when we commit a user, we need to create a global time to expression. So this is just a function which will basically get current timestamps. So it will get the year, it will get the month with the year, it will get the month, the day, month, and year, and then the day. And then it will just query the DHT, looking for those timestamps. And if they don't exist, then it will create the timestamps. And then it will create links from the time to the user with the specified tag. So in this context, when we call global time to expression, the tag would be user, and then we define a direction as well. So in the context of this we have direction reverse, meaning that the user, the time will be linked to the user, not the user to the time. Direction forward would be the current expression linking to the time. And then we just call create pack and create den, which essentially just creates the core like basic pack and den that need to exist for a user.
What's the difference between pack and den?
A pack is like a group of people, essentially. It's a group of people which you invite to your like local expression place, and then you have a den, which is it's essentially your place of expressions. So it's where like all of your private expressions go, all of the things you post publicly, and just to a group.
So I see that it's related to channel. So then, so is a den like a channel, or like how are channels and dens related?
Channels and what related?
Like I see on line 111, expression type is channel, and
Yeah.
mhm.
So yeah, at the oh, I stopped moving. At the moment, we've just I'm saying that a den is a channel, because that's kind of what it is. It's kind of like a local channel to that user, whereby the den is either a private den, a public den, or a shared den, and then it has certain privacy attributes. So yeah, at the moment, den is essentially the same. It is a channel, and
Okay.
then a pack would be a group.
Cool. Has this been? You said you refactored some of this, but how's it been working?
Yeah, so I should actually pull my code in. Yeah, it's been working well. I mean, I've slowly started to test it. I mean, everything's compiling and everything seems to be working together. And yeah, it's working well. I mean, the architecture is coming along, and I'm slowly trying to find the ways to like streamline the process and make some code which is a lot more manageable.
Cool. Yeah, it
So
looks well structured.
actually, one of the refactors that I was talking about, which I did today, was this ability to create like a function descriptor. So basically, when we call the handle hooks function, yeah, this is what I was refactoring in today. Basically, when we call handle hooks, we pass in a vector of type function descriptor, and the function descriptor defines the name of the function and then the parameters. And the parameters is just an enum of the function parameters with each variable that's required for the function, with each parameter that's required for the function. So what this allows us to do is on user, we can define the hooks that we want to run, right? So we can say function descriptor. Okay, the name of the function is global time to expression, and then we just like input all of the parameters that are required for global time to expression to run. And then when we go to utils, we match for the function, and then we unpack the enum, and then we can just call the function directly. So then this allows, like, upon, like, whenever I want to, I can just call this function and I can just dispatch like all of the function calls which I need to. So whether that be to link expressions or to create a den or to create a post or something like that, yeah, it's all possible here. And next thing to implement is the handle contextual links function, which will handle all of the complex linking which I was showing earlier.
Cool. Yeah, it's kind of like closures, but closures in Rust can be a pain to type check. So this is like a more flexible way to do that. Oh, before I forget, I just wanted to. I saw that you have an entry for time. Is that time entry, like that's how you store timestamps for data?
It is, yeah.
Cool. So all entries do have 90% sure they have a timestamp in the header for the entry.
Okay.
And so when you're getting an entry, you can also get its header or headers, which would also include a normal like Unix timestamp.
Okay.
But if you're like querying for it or something, then that can be useful to store it as a legit entry.
Yeah.
But if it's just for being able to associate a timestamp with an entry, then that happens in the headers.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it would be used for querying,
Mhm.
but it might make more sense to use the exact timestamp, well, the timestamp which is used on the entry, so that it matches up with the one in the header,
Mm.
rather than, because I mean here we're just using this datetime function module,
Right.
and yeah, okay, that's
Mm.
good to know. Thank you.
Mhm. Yeah. Um, how about, well, let's see, how much time do we have? Yeah, we got a few minutes, right?
Um,
Yeah, we have
I'm
about 4 minutes left.
4 minutes. Okay. Well, I could ask another question, or if there's anything that you want to focus on for the next few minutes, then let's do that. Otherwise, I will ask a question.
yeah, I have a brief question. I mean,
Mhm.
uh, here, this just defines all of the links that happen on the channel, right?
Mhm.
So, I mean, these are all the from links. So channel to user from channel.
Mhm.
Um, and then here I just have a tag as the asterisk,
Mhm.
basically like denoting to me right now that it's any tag could be possible. But from my understanding, I posted in the Mattermost that you're going to be moving towards, rather than having like a tag, it's going to be a type, or something along those lines, so that rather than, specifying, validation functions and validation package for, an individual tag, you could you could you could specify the validation functions for a subset of tags or a type of tags even.
I think that's so. I haven't kept up as much with the HDK stuff, but that does sound about right.
Okay.
Yeah, and I was going to ask about your validations. Yeah, because it's like I guess what you're saying is you can have different validation rules for different tags, which are going to become more like types. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. Like right now, tag is a little bit of a misnomer because it is. Yeah, it's more like a type that you know about beforehand rather than something the user creates ad hoc in the moment. Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, I mean, I have we don't have any of the validation functions written just yet,
Mm.
but that will come soon, hopefully. And once we can specify the type here, so we can bring them together and have the correct validation functions.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Yeah, because that's such a, that's the meat. Well, it's not the
Yeah, it's
meat,
the
but
key.
yeah, yeah, yeah. If we didn't have to worry about validation, Holochain would be really easy to build.
Yeah.
It's all about making
Yeah, I
sure
mean,
people don't.
it's pretty nice at the moment. I At first Rust was kind of crazy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it took a while. Like, I'm still not really used to it, but I'm starting to get somewhere. I've
Mm-hmm.
been coding Rust, I think, just for a month now.
Okay.
And I'm really learning to like it, just being able to run HC package and then just have everything type checked, and you just know that everything's linking together correctly.
Mm-hmm.
It's really cool.
Yeah. We've all had a pretty steep learning curve with Rust. Like,
Yeah.
I started with it a few months ago myself, and I love it now. And I actually feel really efficient in it. But
Hmm.
for the first month or two, I was not efficient. Like every time I tried to do anything, it was just a learning experience and took
Yeah.
way longer than it should have. But yeah,
That's what the past month has been like.
yeah, 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 man, it's great once you can write something and not be learning and just write it.
Yeah.
It's so
Yeah.
efficient. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well,
Is there
cool.
anything else you want to ask? I mean, I think it's quite hard to run through everything, but
Of course. Yeah. No, I was actually just curious about your validation functions, but
okay.
um, just because that's it's one of the interesting parts. Right? That's the part where you have to think deeply about uh, all the ways somebody could potentially be a bad actor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm almost kind of glad I'm tackling that last once I get a little bit more proficient with Rust.
Yeah. Cool. Well, any other burning questions?
No, I don't think so. I think I've asked everything.
Well, first, thank you, Michael. That was very helpful, and we appreciate the feedback and your time. I guess for us, we really want to move towards this collaborative paradigm where we're working closely together with everybody in this ecosystem, sharing solutions and sharing what we find, as well as receiving feedback. And the first step for us is releasing the software to the public and enabling people to kind of review it, offer their thoughts, feedback, and moving into the front end as well will be, we're in the middle of running a Kickstarter campaign, and we're the last week starts tomorrow, so the last 7 days start tomorrow, and we figured it was time to share with everybody how everything works inside and out. And so just really embracing the idea of ideas being open and not holding on to them. And so with that in mind, our hope is just to rally this community and others to kind of come behind this project, because we really believe that Junto can be something that can provide a lot of people with access to not only a distributed medium, but one that can encourage people to just be more authentic and facilitate that social coordination and collaboration on many levels. And we think that social media is something that is very universally accessible. So that is how we would like to close. And yeah, thanks everyone for watching.
Thank you.